is this new part of the Workers' Rights Bill, which apparently gives workers the right to complain to the boss about being offended if they're sort of front-facing in a business like hospitality, where they might be serving behind a bar, they hear you and I having a conversation which they don't like, suddenly, they get to complain to their employer and might be able to get compensation for being offended.
No, that I think is this government, I think, has done some shocking things to attack free speech. But this, I think, is by far the worst. This is really horrendous. This will effectively be turbocharging the Equality Act, and that chilling effect that the Equality Act has had on workplaces up and down the country, meaning that you have to look over your shoulder before you speak, lower your voice to make sure you're not overheard, undergo these pointless box-ticking diversity training exercises constantly. That will now be extended to leisure spaces, to pubs and bars and restaurants. I mean, I'll give you an example of what this new clause could mean, Mike. So because employers will now be under the same obligation they are to protect their employees from overhearing upsetting conversations between other employees, as you say, that obligation will now be extended to preventing their workers overhearing things likely to upset them by members of the public. Yeah. So, for instance, if a partially sighted steward at a football game overhears a fan saying to a referee, "Are you blind?" That steward could sue the football club for not taking all reasonable steps to protect him from being harassed by having to overhear comments which are likely to make him upset because of his protected characteristic, his partial sightedness. And, a woman wearing an adult human female T-shirt, a gender-critical feminist, won't be able to walk into a pub or a bar or a restaurant or a hotel lounge for fear that a trans employee may be upset by what's written on her T-shirt. Kathleen Stock won't be able to set foot on another university campus in the whole of the UK for fear that a trans employee of the university may feel harassed in virtue of her presence on campus. It's just absolutely extraordinary. They're turbocharging the Equality Act. They're gonna mean pubs are gonna have to employ banter bouncers to police the conversations of customers in pubs to make sure they're not saying anything, not telling any bawdy jokes, for instance, that might upset any oversensitive bar staff. I mean, it's I hope that woke activists in what is now called the Equality and Opportunity Office have just inserted these clauses into this particular bill. They cropped up in something called the Worker Protection Bill in the last Parliament. The Free Speech Union and others campaigned against them and got them stripped out of that particular bill before it received royal assent. They've just miraculously reappeared. It's as though the woke civil servants have copied and pasted them from a bill they couldn't get through the last Parliament and put them into this one. I'm hoping that that Labour are so dumb, they're so dopey, they haven't noticed that these things have been shoehorned in to the Employment Rights Act. I can't believe that Morgan McSweeney would be in favour of this kind of devastating blow to the hospitality industry. I mean, it'll be the end of pubs as we know it. The compliance cost of having to, take all reasonable steps to protect your employees from things they might overhear members of the public saying.
I was on the tube the other day and I saw a poster about how you should be kind to everybody on the tube. While travelling on the tube, remember to be kind. I'm like, what's that got to do with travelling on the tube? It's a bit difficult to be kind when you're pressed up against somebody you've never met, who's sweating on you. Which is generally what happens. I mean, it's just ludicrous. And you know very well that these activists will use this as an excuse to just cancel a few right-wingers that they don't like.
Absolutely. And it's actually worse than those notices on the tube. The notices on the tube were effectively saying, be nice to each other, don't be rude to our staff. You can't often see these notices in banks and elsewhere. Don't be rude to our staff. If you're rude to our staff, we won't serve you. You can't be a customer at this establishment. I mean, fair enough, but this goes way beyond that. This says that if you have a conversation between yourselves that a member of our staff overhears and is upset or offended by, then we can kick you out. We don't want you to be a customer at this particular establishment. They want to police what people are saying in these spaces, lest what they say be overheard. You think I'm exaggerating? I'm not.
No, I know.
Under the Equality Act, employers are obliged to make sure that employees don't overhear upsetting conversations between two different employees in the workplace. That obligation will now extend to conversations between members of the public, not directed at the employee in question just within earshot of the employee in question, or wearing a T-shirt that employee might see. I mean, it's unbelievably draconian and absurd.